How was it to listen to the stories? Nice. We thought we'll be very to the point now, so we don't get more cold. But our idea was that to bring this little stories of the meals. I mean, to when we go back to everyday life, when everything is messy and we're not in a beautiful forest, like how can these little meals guide us, help us to remember something about how we create harmony between the place we happen to be in and the meal, so that every meal is a step towards new food systems that can help us live with the planet in harmony. But is there somebody who would like to share a story, or somebody who maybe was inspired by somebody else's story?
Thank you. Our our storytelling started when we were talking about food, and the best meal we were talking about that we both ever had was the meal we had when we were hungry. So when we've been doing some kind of activity or exercise, and you're maybe even exhausted, and you get that food or get that water to drink, it tastes really good. So my friend were talking about this hiking experience with the scouts when they've been out in the nature, and they had to carry that food to bring with them in that context. Was actually based on what, like, the energy they needed. It was calculated because they couldn't carry more than what they actually needed for that hike. And it sounded like a very nice nature experience, and also the food they were eating were tasting very good when they finally got that, even if he told me it wasn't a what do you say, a very fancy food experience, but it was really a meal to remember. So I like that scouting story, and we both could relate to that.
You have just enough and need to be creative what you have. Yeah. Somebody else?
We start talking about the wonderful ingredients. But at the end we came to that the company, the people we ate with, were almost more important than actually the ingredients.
And may I ask what the place it was?
We were in Congo, we were in Sapmi, we were in Namibia, so we were in different places.
Many different places. All right. So we're going to tell a little bit about the experiment that we've been inside in for 2 years. It's called the 2,000 square meter experiment, and the idea was there to the starting point is an idea from Berlin. You might have heard about the 2,000 square meter in Berlin, and I've illustrated it here. And it is, if we would take all farming land or all arable land on the planet and divide it between if we expect that we will be 9, 10, 11 billion people, we would get approximately 2,000 square meters each. And today, an average Swede, we use 4,000 square meters. So that gives us an idea of how much we need to change if it should be possible for everybody on the planet to eat healthy food. But it's not only about volume of food. Of course, this food needs to be very nutrition and come from good soils and so on, and we also know from, I mean, Corona makes this very obvious to us, but what science have said the last years. There's been a couple of very strong reports on how we need to change the food systems. Is that most of this food needs to come from regional regenerative food systems, and we heard about this morning from Kenneth, who told us about ecosystems that can. That are healthy by themselves, and where we don't need to put in chemicals or nutrients. So what we're doing at Rosendal's Garden is that we have. It started with that. And the gardener there, he is very good at regenerative ways of growing, and he's been close to a group of scientists that has studied the Baltic Sea region. So what is a farm that actually managed to give food that is good for us and for the Baltic Sea and for the planet? What does such a farm look like? So we decided to make a miniature of 2,000 square meters in the middle of Stockholm. And then because this is in, we have very good chefs there at Rosendal's Garden, and there's also big networks of chefs. So we challenge them because they've what you said, like being out in the forest and they like this challenge. Like, okay, you only have this food. You have to come up with new food cultures that the most of the food needs to come from this square. You might we have a little bit of a battle. The gardener says no lemons, no coffee, nothing outside this square, and I say maybe we can, as the Sami, have a little bit of coffee here, some contact with other squares in other parts of the world. So there is that was the challenge, and what we did was that we took this idea. There was 50 farms studied around the Baltic Sea, and we made a miniature. So actually, somebody mentioned today that the knowledge that we need to let the farm land rest. So actually, half of the land is with grass and clover, and in that part, nutrients go down into the ground. So we take carbon and we take kväve, is nitrogen from the air, and as you probably know, leguminosa as clover, they can take the nitrogen from the air, and with cooperating with the soil and with bacteria, they can put nitrogen into the soil. So in this area, we make nutrients go into the ground, and in this area we divide it. So what we need oil, we need protein, we need carbohydrates. So we grow vegetables, we grow canola for rapeseed for getting oil, and we grow old wheat and all kinds of Swedish grains. And so there we bring out nutrients, so the nutrients that we need to eat. But then if this, so this is kind of an ideal picture. What does the landscape, what does the future look like? And what happens is that it becomes very clear when you stand in the middle here, like what are all the things we need to change? And for example, it becomes very obvious that it's a very bad idea. If we only have this area, it's a very bad idea to feed animals of things that we as humans could eat. But it's a good idea to have a cow here or 2 sheep, or actually this is 0.1 cow. So we have 0.1 cow per person. And we don't necessarily, it's a really bad idea to take care of your own 2,000 square meters. It's not about being self-sufficient. So we should probably put our squares together and probably let a farmer handle it who knows how to do things. But the idea is the proportions. So how much do I need to change my diet, and how much do I need to change where my food comes from? The other things are also obvious. Like, for example, in Sweden, we grow sugar beets, and we use a lot of areas for producing alcohol, beer, and vodka. So all those things becomes very obvious that yeah, if we should make this puzzle work, if we should make this fit, we have to actually prioritize and make some changes, and it's fun because we've had. We've taken the second harvest from this place, and there's been a lot, because this is the middle of Stockholm and it's a beautiful area. We have had different companies, different big companies, and politicians and people coming to visit, and it's a little bit like with Corona now. I mean, you can see, if you look at one perspective, it's like, oh, I have only this little area, or you can see, okay, I need to change it like this. I could do this. I'm actually, if I want to have a beautiful cake with cream and strawberries. Okay, how many can I have per year? Who is going to get that? And that is kind of it's not only I would say it's a creative challenge, and it also gives a very clear picture of, for example, what you as a company how you need to think in your strategies completely differently. And just an example, we had two companies that make vodka, one very big, and you might guess which one that is, and then one very small. And then we looked at this and said, yeah, well, sorry, your business idea is kind of, it probably won't work that well in the future. But then the little company came back after 2 weeks and said, well, we found this weed that you have here in the edges, and we've started to burn alcohol out of that. And I think that story is kind of beautiful because it tells and I think it's a little bit, when I go on backpacking and I know I only have those little things that I can eat. But then you bring some sort of strange candies or strange sausage or something. So I think those things that humans really love, we will definitely find a way to bring that into a future. And I think I think that's kind of the beautiful thing with humans, that we do solve things, but we need to know the proportions. And there's another thing I wanted to mention that has been quite clear now that we've been here these days. It's how science comes into this, because it's really hard. We've had several scientists coming here. For example, there's one group of scientists that made a report called the Eat Lancet report, and in I think it was in January this year, or a year ago, that they presented the very good news from science that they've looked at data on global level, and what their conclusion is that it is possible to feed everyone on the planet with healthy food in a sustainable way, and that's actually really, really good news, because that means that this is a kind of proof of concept. And because I'm trained as an agronomist, and I've always been in this battle between conventional farming and organic farming, and I think it's a very different mindset. If we know there is a point to have on different places on Earth, there's a point to have these visions. Okay, this is the food culture we want. This is what we want our landscape to look like, because it's possible to do it. And we actually didn't know that before. We think, oh, it might not work. Maybe I have to have some toilet paper at home. But we know that it's possible, and that makes it so incredibly meaningful to try. And also, these scientists, they were accused of being carrot polices, because they said, I mean, they gave the proportions. They said the first thing that happened in our experiment was that we started to talk with local scientists who knew the soil and what crop rotation and stuff. So this report came after, but they said, they gave us an approximate number. They said, okay, you have approximately 1 liter per milk per week, approximately this amount of potatoes. In Europe, we need to eat a little bit less of this. In North America, and we need to use, for example, 8,000 square meter per person. So you got a proportion, and it was actually funny to see how that triggered the chefs, because all of a sudden they started to get an idea. Okay, this is my pantry. This is my pantry is a fancy word that I learned recently. Skafferi, or fridge, and not only the cold fridge, but where you store your food. And an interesting thing was, because I don't know if you recognize that we, at least me, I've been taught, like, okay, this is your plate, you should have this much on your plate, that's healthy for you, that's good for you. And there's also, you put a chicken on it, and then you get in a digital tool, and then it says red, you can't eat that, and then you put something else, and it's like, it doesn't start my creativity. But what we discovered when we talked about pantry, which is a little bit bigger size, then that started the creative process with the chefs. And then I live in Stockholm, I'm by the Baltic Sea. I can use my knowledge and my artistic skills to fill this pantry with cool stuff. So we start bringing out a new food culture. I mean, some things needs to be based on tradition. We're influenced by a lot of things. We use spices from all over the world. Some of those spices will disappear. They will move to other countries. That will change. But we need to have a food culture that is mostly based on the regional regenerative farming, and that was very nice to see how actually. That's a challenge. That's a fun challenge. Like, how can we create food that is actually going to help us to eat to a healthy future? Because that's not easy to figure out on your own. And I just mentioned the third thing that happened, and also because we talked a lot about youth. One of the first thing that happened was that we had a big school called Fryshuset, that they realized that they were really good at social sustainability, but the kids the students there demanded or expected the school to be equally good at ecological sustainability. So they thought, okay, we need to deal with the food we serve, and they were going into a new procurement process and have. And they needed a vision. A chef sent them to us and said, "Go and work with your vision, because you can't go into a procurement not knowing what you want. Then you will be fooled and you will have terrible food." And so also the rector said that I don't want to train my students as consumers and let them have constant choices like this. They should just come into the canteen and trust that grown-ups in the world make sure that there is food that is healthy for them and for the Baltic Sea and for the world in this canteen, which I think was a really, really interesting mind shift. And so actually they came to us, and they had a group called Matsenaten, which was teachers and students, and they had been taught what a lot of young people have been taught, like, oh, you make a footprint, you should make that smaller, it's terrible if you do that, you can't do that. But when we told them, well, you can see it like that, but you can also see it like you have 2,000 square meters that you create together with a farmer. When you choose what you eat, you give that a farmer somewhere a choice to make a landscape that is the landscape that can help everybody's future. And then they realized, okay, we have 1,400 meals per day. That means that we could have we can have a contract with a farmer that has I think it was 40 hectare big farm, and then we can do this, and we can go there and learn things, and we can decide together what we should cook. So they did that shift, and then they went home, because this was just an exercise, 1-day workshop, and then it was completely silent for 3 months, and we wondered, oh my God, what's happening? and how are they going to find the company and how it's going to go. But then they came back after 3 months and said, we've decided to start our own kitchen and rent a chef and start on this journey. And really use the canteen as a room to not only have power of your own health and get that knowledge, but also to get power of your future through food. So that was one of the most positive stories. There's many other stories, but I should maybe back off and give the word to you. Back away from the square. Yes.
Yeah. So. From there on, we are moving towards trying to create a sort of food vision for our region, for Stockholm. And we have started to kind of extract 4 learnings or 4 seeds departing from this project, out of which one is one that you have clearly outlined here, which is something that we call foodscapes or food landscapes right now, which is about taking sort of scientific data and make it tangible regionally. So you would actually look at the science and you could understand what you could do in collaboration with the landscape, what that could sort of give. Another one is a call to action called "Take Care of Your Square." Naturally, it derives from this actual square. It's a plot of land. So. In one sense, we are there not thinking circular, but quite square. But we see it as a way to not only as a farmer to think about your square, but it's also an extended concept where you can find an area of responsibility that you have for yourself. It doesn't have to do with land, really. And then we have one seed, which is the pantry, the food pantry, but there it is circular, so we call it the circular food pantry. And it's where the farming meets the cooking, and it's a space of creative constraints. So you would have what you can cook from, and you would have what you can produce for. So it's a sort of interface for dialogue, so to say. And then we're working with a reporting framework that goes under the working title Vitality Reporting, which is about how you can contribute to life in your space as an actor. And it's a format we're working on a format that is possible for anybody almost to fill in. You don't have to be a reporting professional to do it, and it's cross-scale. So you're generating stories about the region and about the locality in the region and about what you are doing in that locality together with others. And from that cross-scale knowledge, you can start to work on multiple levels. And we are connecting the regional level foremost with SDGs. So we think that's a sort of better sightline in scales than to try to, as one person, just work with water if you're not obviously a water professional of some kind.
Yeah. And this work with the reporting started because we were collaborating with PwC, so consultant company who actually were interested in changing the good sed, good practice within auditing, and they saw that we're not at all the soil that we're completely dependent on to get our food. We don't look at the value of that. You can be a farmer and just ruin your soil, or you can be a really good farmer and increase the value of the soil. But it doesn't matter. The bank could give you the same loan, or that's not looked upon. So there's lots of practices like that. The very some of the things that we included is like soft values that are really important in transformation, but it's also a lot of like hard, very measurable things that are overlooked that needs to be included if we want a circular bio-based economy to work.
Yeah, and it's also an attempt to reconnect the figures that you would find in a sustainability report that you don't really understand the proportionals in relationship to the size of the company or the entity and the size of of land where they are active. So we're trying to make that sort of, if you are reporting a figure on one scale, you would sort of be able to follow it through to other scales and so on.
And I think the basic idea is that there is so many companies and small actors that do good things that create a lot of important value, but you can't communicate it. You need to communicate it to get paid for things and to attract resources. You need to be audited, of course, and also we need to you need to show that you are respecting the limits or the boundaries of the ecological system. But it's also like, if we're going to shift to a circular economy, then I need to I need to create business model together with other actors, and that's quite tricky. We need very stable contracts and good relationships for that, and we think that needs to be. We want to contribute to like how that could be done, and that's actually money from the Swedish innovation agency Vinnova, who wanted to support that kind of work. So those were the 4 seeds, and we're kind of we're in between. So we plunged into this experiment, and these 4 seeds emerged, and of course Stockholm is our region, and we want to see regenerative farming and see how that shift could happen in Stockholm. We want to support that, but we also realized that it's really fun to think like, what if there was 2,000 square meters on other parts of the world, and we could learn between those areas.
Yeah.
So these 4 seeds is to facilitate learning in many places.
And possibly the trade of global trade of food would also be sort of closer connected to a trade of food culture, since the food culture is very connected then to the food that is grown in a specific area, in a more obvious way.
Yeah, and just the final thing we wanted to say was that the Rockefeller Foundation, they have recently had a competition for Food Vision 2050, and they have sent out and asked a lot of places all over the world to create their vision for regenerative food systems 2050, and want to support that. And so there was, I think there was 1,300 places all over the world that submitted this, and of course Rockefeller put this into an artificial intelligence, and this goes into next World Food Summit, blah blah blah. But they also have a next level of competition where there's 80 visions that are selected to get support to be developed, and support to realize their vision. And we just last week got the happy news that we were among the 80 selected. But that's for all of us. But so we're a little bit cold and lots of information these last days and very difficult questions. I'm very grateful. I've been very inspired, like how to work with science communication and faith, because I think that's very. So we're a little all over the place now, but we're very, very glad if. We're now, of course, inviting everybody who wants to develop this vision with us and who would be interested to do things in other places in cooperation with us. So, yes, please, when we're warm again, let's talk about it.
I just want to finish off with mentioning one item of food, because we haven't done that, have we?
Nope.
No. One bummer is that pommes frites is a true luxury. On these 2,000 square meters, the oil budget is 5 liters for a full year. So you wouldn't really want to spend 1-2 liters on making French fries. So I don't know if we're going to get any French fries tonight. But yeah, that's something that we have learned to really cherish French fries in another way.
I actually want to ask a final follow-up one for you, because one of the things I'm really passionate about is of course to work from a system analysis approach, and to work with Nexus in the sense that you bring not only different perspectives and thematic areas together, but also people from different sectors together. And in People and Planet, we have brought the environmental sector, the faith sector, the culture sector, a lot of sectors together. And you told me last night that you had for the first time experienced a lot of things about faith and faith actors. So my question is, experiencing some of these new concepts in People and Planet and new emerging actors, how has this sort of potentially triggered you to think in new ways, or have you got any new ideas how you can take this, to the next level?
Yeah, well, I can maybe compare to a standard task of that you're giving as a designer and sometimes as an artist, especially if it's an instrumentalized artist within a sustainability context, that you're sort of bringing the life into this place and the sort of tangible or experienceable meaning of some kind. And in this context, I feel it is kind of the other way around, where the context itself is sort of purpose-based and meaning-based and faith-based, and yeah, that's that's the norm here, which is kind of fascinating actually. So that's why I'm not talking as an artist, but more as a, I don't know, reporter.
But will you engage with faith actors in your future work? Do you think so?
I do think so, yes. I hope so. I think that faith is sort of a missing piece here, and when it comes to food and food culture and how that is grounded in a community. So I see really a place for creative work between food culture, a place, and a faith community.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been working at the Stockholm Resilience Center, so when we talk about complexity, we talk about systems thinking. I tend to, when I want to talk about meeting, I tend to fall back on that language. Because I miss a language, and I think that's really terrible, to take the most meaningful things and put them into that language. I would love to develop a different language and be able to talk about those things in a different way. And I think I've had a couple of very interesting meetings here, so I hope to be able to develop that.
Thank you for inviting us into your square, and we promise to do our best to take care of our respective square where we are. My co-facilitator, Ola, will lead us in a final meditation exercise soon. But before that, I want to just let you know what's going to happen next. When we leave from here, we will divide ourselves between two groups. Those who wants to go back to the main library. I know some of you left some things over there. And obviously then you should go there now because it will be locked later tonight. So for all of you who needs to go back to the library, you will take one bus. And that bus will stop at the library. So if you need then to revisit Sida before dinner, you have to walk to Sida, but you will be dropped at the library, and then we will assemble for dinner at 6 at the same restaurant as usual. And the other bus will take those of you who wants to go to Sida, Sida Partnership Forum, and then you will be dropped there, and then you will walk back to the restaurant where we have dinner. So there will be those two options. And once we are down with the buses, I will explain which bus will take you where. And also when we departure in our facilitators groups, we made sure we brought everything from there up here. So all our stuff should be here, but make sure you got all your respective items with you, because unfortunately, according to our plans, we're not coming back here. So it's good if you bring your stuff back with you. Okay, Ola.
Yes, and on that note, just make sure there's a lot of these black bags with the SDGs on them, and so just make sure you pick the right one. You might want to look into it.
And maybe you could help us. All the blue yoga mats belongs to the yoga room at Sida Partnership Forum. So those of you who take the bus to Sida, please make sure that all the blue yoga mats are in that particular bus. And for all that goes back to the library, with that bus we should put all the food and mugs and the coffee that is still left, etc. So you can help us with that. Thank you.
So as a final closure for this session, I would like to invite you all just for a minute's meditation. I will play intuitively from on the kalimba, and I invite you to close your eyes, just enjoy the rays of sunshine as long as we have them, and just a moment to close this session.
Okay, thanks to everyone. Let's get back to the buses.